So The Lord of the Rings is one of the touchstones of modern fantasy role-playing. But the problem is, most role-playing games can't really give you that experience. Partly because during Lord of the Rings, they all split up. You got Frodo and Sam off in Mordor. You've got Gimli, Legolas, Aragorn, and Gandalf doing their thing. You got Pippin in one place. You got Merry in another. And this, if you try to do it with D&D, is gonna be a disaster. But there is a style of gaming that can be adapted to just about any system that actually makes this easier. That is Troupe style play. So if you think of most of the television shows that we really enjoy, a lot of them have a wide, sprawling cast of characters, and not all of them show up all of the time. Even Walking Dead got to the point where very often they would have a number of characters that would be off on their own. And this, in a role-playing context, is Bria and Kevin didn't show up this week. We have these three people. We know they can't make it another week as well. Let's just run it with these people. But there's plenty of shows, there's plenty of fiction where you have different factions in different places doing different things. And that can make for an amazing role-playing game. Think about superheroes. Pretty much every role-playing campaign of superheroes tends to become the Avengers. It's focused mostly on that group of 4 to 5 plus characters, and we lose their NPCs. We don't get a chance to actually know them and play with them very often outside of a single moment. What if someone at your table could spend a session playing Aunt May? Someone else could spend a session playing J. Jonah Jameson. If it's Superman, what if someone is Lex Luthor? What if someone picks up for this session Lois Lane or Jimmy Olsen? Now, most games don't handle this power differentiation pretty well. Smallville does. But if you've got a system that can handle that, or if you just want to deal with people at a similar level of power in different places doing different things, this is a good thing for you to take into. It helps to explain this first. In Smallville, you create this huge relationship map, which I'll talk about in another video, that really gives you a ton of NPCs that are important to your character. These are often for the GM to play, but there's nothing that doesn't say you can pick up those characters. So we'd have the start of a session, someone would go, oh, I'm going to play so-and-so's wife. Someone's like, oh, I'm going to play this villain, or oh, I'm going to play this other character besides my main one. So Troupe style play is you have one character that's yours and a bunch of characters that either belong to one person because they've kind of claimed that one, or a whole bunch of them. And this comes from the game Ars Magica. Ars Magica is a fantastic game that's not played enough, and with the best magic system in role-playing games. If you want to turn an entire forest into an army of bears, you could do that in Ars Magica. Not only can you do that in Ars Magica, you could do that right after character creation if you want. It took the idea that wizards should be super powerful compared to everybody else, but to make it interesting, it made it so that their source of magic made other people wigged out by them. So what it meant is your companions, your hero-level characters, your Aragorns, your Gimlis, they had a purpose because they could deal with regular people just fine. But it also meant here's a ton of people that are a part of the home of the mages, the Covenant, that also have abilities that also can be used throughout the game. So you've got your mage, who's your super powerful Gandalf type character. You have your companion, who is Frodo, Gimli, Aragorn is one of those. And then you've got your Grogs, which can include whoever Sean Bean's brother was. Faramir? I think it's Faramir. In Lord of the Rings, it can include Pippin, Merry. In this case, could include Treebeard, or all these other ones that are important to the story in specific ways, but they are not who we're focusing most of our energy on. If you play a game this way, you end up being able to not just look over the story of these, say, 4 characters, you get to look over the story of an entire community. And it's cool. And it opens up the role-playing possibilities, including the fact that because the Grogs are a little more expendable, the players tend to use them for comic relief, as well as creating some really deep, interesting characters that they go into knowing if this character dies, our whole story doesn't stop. They're much more expendable, both by the mechanics of the game in Ars Magica and also by just how important they are to the story. To help describe this and to show you a way that you can do this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use Deadwood as an inspiration. If you've never seen the television show Deadwood, you should see Deadwood. The best way to think about it is you have a western town in 1880s where you have a couple very strong factions led by a couple people. You have Al Swearingen, who is essentially a villain at the beginning of the TV series, though he becomes the central character in many respects. You have Seth Bullock, who is often opposed to Al Swearingen, who is someone who used to be a sheriff who tried to leave that life behind, who ends up becoming the law in Deadwood because he is a really good person who is fighting against his own demons. You have, a couple seasons later, George Hurst, who comes in, who is someone who is able to challenge both Al and Seth as he is trying to gain his power through the gold coming out of the town. Then you have a variety of independent people that aren't as tied in with a single faction. If you're using Troupe-style play, what you can actually do is create this environment in your game session. First thing you need to do is decide who are the important characters. Now, for purposes of just numbers-wise to show you, I'm going to use like a 100-point character, like you would see GURPS, low-level champion, something along those lines. I'm going to say 100 points is what a standard PC is. Well, we've decided Seth, Al, George, and then we take Doc Cochran, because we like him as a character, and someone decides they want to be the doctor that kind of goes around to all the different places and is a part of all these stories. We put them at 120 points. This is like maybe starting at 5th level in D&D. We give them extra experience points to show that they're a little more powerful. These are the players' actual main characters, though they don't play them every session. Then we create their companions. They say, who is someone we want to create in the town who is important enough to be someone that I hop into a decent amount of the time. But here's the thing. That character needs to not be tied into your specific character. If I'm playing Seth Bullock, I can't also play Charlie Utter in the same session because the two of them are very tightly connected. So in this case, you start looking at other people's and working in their organizations. So if I am Seth Bullock's character, I might decide to play Dan Doherty, who is the bartender of Al's Saloon, plus his right-hand guy. I create him like a regular character, so I put him at 100 points. Each of us chooses a character that's important. For our purposes, what I put here, we kind of left out one of the independents. Perhaps the dude playing Cochran just decides, I will grab whoever, I don't care about them. Then the other characters are either created, or especially if you're in a system where they can be created quickly, you can create templates that you can just grab and put down there, or leave it up to the players to quickly put them together as they are playing them. Everyone else say 80 points. So we've got like a 5th level character, like a 3rd level character, then a 1st level character. Though, there's nothing that says one of the minor characters cannot be just as competent as any of the other characters. If someone comes in as a minor character who is an experienced lawman or roadman who was used to taking out people in fights, you can ramp up his amount of points or his level, and it's fine. What we're saying with the 100 points, 120 points, they are more important to the story, at least at first, than we had planned. So at this point, you have all of your characters put together. You've probably only made 2. The rest of them you're leaving to be quickly made, depending on the system. Or you create some generic templates that you can just kind of pull and make a few changes to. So here's what our sessions look like. We actually begin in our first session, everyone's playing their main characters. And for our purposes, I took just 3 players on this one. So we have Al, George, and Seth in our first session. Each of them are playing their main characters, and we're setting up the situation. The next session, we go to Al's character. Well, the second PC, who was playing George Hurst, decides, oh, I'm going to take Dan Doherty and play him, and the guy playing Seth Bullock, he can pull one of the other characters or switch around as necessary and start to flesh them out. And now we get to explore what Al's world is like, sometimes apart from the other characters, sometimes involving them. Though if you involve one of the major characters, they would then hop back into that character. For the third session, we go to George Hurst's character, and then Seth Bullock's character decides, oh, Joni Stubbs is who interests me. I'm going to play her. She's the one I created. And then Al will grab one of the other characters associated either with George or with anybody else. Our fourth session, Seth Bullock's character, we explore his world. The person who is playing Al Swearingen is the one who has Ellsworth. The two of them are in some ways the focus, while the guy playing George Hurst decides, I'm going to grab one of these other characters as interests me. And then after that, you can kind of start your sessions with, who do you want to play? based off of what happened last game, who is interesting to be now. So to show it at a glance, this is what your pool of characters would look like. Al Swearengen's also got Ellsworth. Those are his. George Hurst also has Dan Doherty. Those are that person's. Seth Bullock and Joni Stubbs, same player. All of the rest of them can be grabbed as necessary. Though you might decide, oh, listen, George's character, he's the one who plays Calamity Jane the best. We love him as Calamity Jane. We're gonna probably not play her as a character. The game master can pick her up if George Hurst is part of that particular game session. This can be used in all sorts of things. One of the things I did with a longer-term campaign, or wanted to do with a longer-term superhero campaign, was to have essentially individual movies where we focus on one superhero and all of his NPCs, his or her NPCs. Then the next session, another superhero and all of their NPCs, and then another superhero and all their NPCs, and then bring it together for an Avengers-style game, and then have it split up again. This is what the original plan had been. We had a little too many people to do it. It's still something that I want to try, but that was one of the things that we were looking at doing. Troupe-style play will open up your players to playing types of characters that might not otherwise play, to feeling more free, because this is not your major character. If this character dies, it doesn't stop the game. The weird place this puts a lot of people, where at first they think, I don't care about these characters. Very often we discovered the most fun that the players often had was when everyone decided to take one of the minor characters. Because they're like, ooh, we want to play all of these other minor characters because we think that's going to be awesome. So they went ahead and did that, and at the end of it, we had really well-developed characters we weren't expecting. In my Ars Magica campaign, we had 2 guards, mostly used originally for comic relief, that eventually built up this really kind of heart-rending, wonderful storyline. And when one of them died, it became this tragic story that affected everybody, because it wasn't just that dude over there that died, it was Stephen. And Robert and Stephen were 2 characters that everybody loved because they had played them, we had developed them, and we had seen them be awesome and goofy and all sorts of things, and fleshed them out. I highly recommend Troupe-style play. I think more games should have this. I think it's a sort of RPG tech that we're missing way too much. So, Troupe-style play, you can do it with just about any game. It's just a matter of how much work it's going to do to create quick and easy, what we'll call them grogs for this one, of the pool of characters that belong to everybody. If there are templates available to you, it's a snap. Otherwise, making a couple and then letting people switch them in and out happens really easily. Doing this in Champions might be a pain in the ass. Doing this in any kind of game where first level characters rolled up quickly could actually go really quickly and easily, and you could at some point kind of go through and have someone create them as necessary. If you do this, have fun with it. Give yourself an opportunity to jump into the roles of those characters that might otherwise get a pass. You'll have a richer world for it. It will feel more full. It'll feel more real. And stories you never would have thought, because our campaigns tend to be based around this small group of, I'll call them adventurers, depending on what style of game you're playing, but this very small group of people. And what it does is it tends to lock us in, kind of like a television show where we sometimes go past when it's interesting because their story has been told, which is one of the reasons I highly suggest trying this out. Troupe-style play, Ars Magica goes into it pretty deeply. It's well worth checking out. I hope you like it.